All right, guys, welcome back to Nate the Hoof Guy. Today's video, we got a couple trims for you. The first of which is a heifer that I came across that had some sole separation due to a white line and then had some digital dermatitis underneath it. And then the second one is a cow from this summer. I was going through some footage and realized that I never showed you this, and it's along the same lines as this lesion, so we're going to show you them both today. Now, it's pretty obvious when we've got sole separation like this that there's an underlying problem we have to deal with. But it's not always as clear cut as to what that problem is. Now, at first glance, you're going to say this is probably a white line lesion, but that lesion has actually started to heal, and what we're dealing with is digital dermatitis that is colonized on that lesion site. So when we talk about digital dermatitis colonizing on corium, what that's called, or what we refer to that as, is hairy attack. That's when that hairy wart bacteria or digital dermatitis attacks the sole of the foot. And in this case, what we had was a white line lesion that allowed that bacteria to take hold. What we're going to do now is we're going to swing ahead and take a look at another foot from this summer that I came across. In this case, we have a sole ulcer, and which allowed that bacteria to get in, and that was the site for the colonization. Don't worry, this foot is not finished, and we will double back and finish this foot up after we look at the sole ulcer from this summer. So I get comments a lot questioning why I don't disinfect these areas and sterilize these areas before I start trimming on them. And this is a perfect example of why I wouldn't do that. Had I disinfected this foot prior to trimming, you can see all of this area underneath here that would have not even been touched by that. I would have removed all of that area. So the analogy to kind of try to put this into perspective is let's assume that you were to cut yourself and you had let's say you had a pair of gloves on, you cut yourself through those gloves, right? And it's bleeding, so you decide to wrap it up and head to the ER. Now, when you get there, the nurse is not going to disinfect the glove and disinfect everything on the outside. She's going to take all of that off first, get down to the actual site of the injury, and then she's going to disinfect and clean that out. And when we're trimming, that's exactly what we're doing. We're removing all this old, this dead loose hoof and getting down to that lesion so we can get all the way around it, clean up those margins, and then we're going to disinfect everything really well before we dress it and do whatever else we need to do. But disinfecting ahead of time is simply wasting product, number one, and not accomplishing what we need to do. What we're removing is simply dead, loose horn, and a lot of that, especially when we're dealing with sole separation, is covering up the actual lesion itself. Here you can see how I used the hook on the end of that knife to pull that hoof away before cutting it so I don't accidentally cut anything underneath it. Don't worry, that mooing you're hearing is not from this cow. It's the girls waiting in line to be trimmed that are separated from their feed. How do I know that this has got digital dermatitis on it and is not just your run-of-the-mill ulcer? Well, two ways. Number one, it's irregular shaped. It's typically a sole ulcer is going to be generally circular, where this one is elongated and tracking toward the inside of the foot. Another way we can tell is based on the appearance of it. It's got the outside is much more of a white mottled color rather than a typical sole ulcer. So those are the two basic ways. Another way is you can tell is by the odor, but in this case it's really the site and the way that it tracks up toward the inner part of the foot to give it away. Because of the location of this lesion and the swelling in that lateral claw or that outside claw, this girl's going to get a block, and she's also going to get a wrap with salicylic acid. However, that's not always the case when we treat these, as you're going to see as we go back and finish that trim at the beginning of the video. Here you can get a good look at that dermatitis, but we're not done with this foot yet. We've got to finish trimming it, and we've got a lot of loose horn yet to remove on this. All of this loose horn that I'm going to remove now is not due to this digital dermatitis up on top there. What this is from is that initial white line lesion that happened a month or so ago that has now basically healed up, but we still have all that loose horn there. So I got to get that away, get down to nice, good, sound horn. The key part when treating these is to remove all of the loose stuff really well around the lesion. That's the part that needs to close up. We don't have to be too crazy about making this foot perfectly white everywhere else. That it's inconsequential. All of this hoof that's on the outside here is from the past. It's like a timeline of the past that we're looking at. The sound horn underneath is what eventually is going to become the weight-bearing surface. And these little imperfections in the sole now, they don't have to be perfectly white and clean to make this a sound foot. That eventually is going to grow out and wear off just like any normal hoof would. What I'm doing here is removing any of this stuff along the top that's loose. The stuff I'm getting right now is where that initial lesion site was precisely way up at the top there, which is what allowed this dermatitis to set in. So I'm going to get that all clean. I'm going to leave the majority of that hoof wall there. And the reason I do that is because I want this foot, once this is healed, which this lesion is going to take a matter of a week really to heal over. The horn underneath is starting to get sound already. But the reason I leave that outside wall intact and basically at the same height of that other claw is because I want this foot to be balanced when that's healed. If I remove that all way down, what I'm doing is creating a poor foot angle with that lateral claw, which, as we know, leads to sole ulcers eventually. Now, this particular cow or this heifer is young and is not really susceptible to that, but I'm always looking to maximize foot angle. And if I remove a bunch of that now, it's just going to create an imbalance and problems in the future. So I want that outside wall to try to be at the normal height if possible. Because this lesion is so high, all I got to do really is clean this up rather, and I'm not going to need to put a block on this claw because of where this lesion is located. It's up high. We've got good sound horn here, which I'll show you here in a minute. From this angle, you can get a better look at that new underlying sole, and it's starting to firm up. It's about 1/8 of an inch thick, I'd say, at this point. I've got all the loose hoof removed from around that lesion. Some of that dark stuff you see that encircles it is actually part of the lesion. I don't want to cut that off at this point. So all I got to do now is wrap this up with some salicylic acid, and this lesion will heal. I've left that outside wall to keep this foot balanced when it comes off. And because this lesion is high, I'm not going to worry about putting a block on this foot. And she's a young animal, so she'll be able to handle it as well. Of course, right when you put the treatment on, they like to flinch and get it all on the ground. So let's finish this foot up and let her go and see how she walks. And now she's all done, ready to go get some breakfast and take a nap. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.